Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, this is Boisterous coming to you with some Gold League goodness out on that Cloud Kingdom LE. Spawning up here in the top right hand corner, we have Clayjar as the red Protoss, and down here in the bottom left hand corner, we have his opponent Testament? I've played this guy. He's a blue Zerg, but I've played him before, and I know it. And my game just lagged a little bit, so I'm not sure if you guys picked up on that, and I apologize if you did. My sound's really loud. Let's go like 19. Yeah, 19's a good number. Don't read into that, anybody. Just don't read into that at all. Okay, well, I feel like because it kind of just happened and it's kind of big, I should say what my position is on the 1.5. And I know that like half of you are going to turn off the stream after this, but I think it's great for StarCraft, because StarCraft is a game that is amazingly competitive. And the arcade version kind of opens up like what Warcraft 3 was. I mean, the arcade isn't as good as the Warcraft 3 custom game still, just because of how the map maker is designed and how hard it is to just create purely awesomely massive maps. Like in Warcraft 3, I'm not sure if anybody else here played it, but Azeroth Wars was my favorite map ever. It was freaking fantastic, and it was huge. It was like 3 times the maximum size of a StarCraft 2 map. And it was awesome because of that. And you know, you just had these giant like 12-player games, and it was sick. You just can't quite capture that in StarCraft 2. However, the arcade is definitely on the way there. It's a step in the right direction. So even though I know there are those like high-level Masters players that are like, oh, I need to drill through like 4 extra menus to get to my wins. I mean, I know that this is probably bringing in a whole lot of casuals and making Battle.net a much more popular server, or a much more like popular game, and StarCraft 2 a better game. But oh, those extra menus, man. Damn. Yeah, I don't like that at all. Anyway, we have both players going for amazingly standard builds. Did my sound turn off? Sound, what are you doing, man? Anyway, Clayjar is going for the what looks like a Forge Fast expand. However, you went for 2 pylons first, which is something that you don't see a lot of, and by that I mean you don't see any of. It's kind of an odd build. I'm not going to say bad, but I mean, usually you spend some money to make a Forge first before you build that second pylon, especially considering the fact that where the second pylon is. And you don't really need to be able to do that. You don't need to be able to drop your Forge and then instant drop your gateway. It's not really a requirement. Plus, this pylon being here is actually kind of a security threat. If you're going to wall like this, I would, let's say, put the pylon more to the front so that you can fit a photon cannon snugly behind it. Which I know a lot of you are like, what does that do? It just makes the wall too deep. So it's basically as beefy as a gateway or a Forge. Because, you know, if they're coming through with banelings, they're going to need to hit the pylon, and then they're going to need to hit the cannon, which just, you know, doubles the, it doubles it. It's very it makes it a lot stronger. It's nice. We have Testament just going for, you know, the standard 15 hatch in every matchup, because, you know what, 15 hatches are awesome. Just go for that economy fast, because the economy leaves you into a game where you have a much better chance of winning, because most of the time Zerg players in the late game, they win. That's a very strong part of Zerg, is, you know, that late game army that if you can control it right, it's very hard to kill, just because of how beefy Ultralisks are and how many units you get when you build Brood Lords. A lot of people would say that's just like imba, but it's like, it's kind of what the Zerg feel is currently. I mean, the Zerg feel a year ago was Zerg armies suck. Kill your opponent in the mid game, never get to the late game because you're not going to win because we blow late game. And you know, it's just part of that metagaming where now Zergs are starting to take over the late game, and they're starting to kind of like lose a bit more in the mid game because people are catching them during those tech switches to Ultralisks and those tech switches to Broodlords, and they're finding all those like really vulnerable timings to abuse out of a Zerg player. If you catch a Zerg player while his Broodlords are morphing, the Zerg player loses. It's a very, very hard to actually survive when you get found when the broodlords are morphing. We have 4 gateways coming out from Clayjar now. Of course, this is kind of just standard because he's on 2 bases. It's not at all any or anything like that. It starts to get all any once you get up to like the 7 gate line. And even then, I think 7 gates is okay. It's definitely very, very all any, but it's okay. 8 gates is your completely all in, and just that's the actual, you're trying to kill your opponent right freaking now. We have the chrono boosts going down in the cybernetics core, and I was actually just about to comment that the chrono boosts weren't happening, but they are. I would like to see a bit more chrono boosting on probes, purely because he has 2 nexuses up, and both of them are approaching that 75 energy mark, where they're getting ready to hit that point where they're just going to start wasting energy, which is not a point you want to hit. We have the 3rd base from the Zerg player finally being up. Pretty good injects, and I am lagging a lot right now, and I do not know why. Okay, I just closed down like 19 different things, so hopefully that'll help. And that might not have come over during the video, because I mean I'm still showing a steady 30 FPS. However, it was actually getting very hard for me to commentate, so that's why I got distracted for a couple seconds there. He's going to stop at what looks like 5 gateways. Yep, he is indeed stopping at 5 gateways, which is kind of an odd spot to stop. He might go for like a 5 gate 2 robo, which would make sense. And we have an Overlord here, an Overlord getting scouted out up here and popping, and just actually getting absolutely destroyed. That's exactly what you want to do in this situation. You want to be denying that scouting information, especially when you're going for something like a Twilight Council at the 8-minute 45-second mark, because your army is not going to be strong for a very, very long time. We have an Infestation Pit and a Spire coming out, which is something that I actually like to see happening, because Zerg players can take a lot of gas and they can get that economy up really fast. Once you're on 3 bases, you can literally just build an Infestation Pit or a Spire to throw your opponent off. Now, of course, it's not actually going to do anything to Clayjar, because Clayjar doesn't actually know about it. He has absolutely no information about it. However, if you got into a base and you saw an Infestation Pit and a Spire, you would be like, well, damn, I have actually absolutely no clue what he plans on building, because he has both tech buildings. You know, he's going to need to wait for those units to come out, or wait for something like this guy, you know, jiggling, being extremely happy. Oh my god, he is so happy. And I've always wondered what this is. What is the Infestation Pit? Because it has a face, or a facey thing. That's definitely a face. Like, is that just like a Nidus worm that kind of got popped open? Like, they ripped the Nidus worm open and they're like, good, now you can research infestors. Nice job. Ah, man. It's kind of disgusting, actually. Then, like, the Roach Warren's alive. I don't understand how, like, this is a Roach Warren, because there's just, like, this thing, like, in there that looks kind of like a tongue, actually. It's very sketchy. It looks like the SC1 Mutalisks. Like, you know that little, like, glaive thing that they had that stuck out that was like, bleh, bleh. You know, that thing? Yeah. I know you all know what that thing was. And it would appear that the pylon is going to get dropped down. Is he still on 5 gateways? Why is he only on 5? Why are there 3 photon cannons here? That's an odd spot to put photon cannons. That's a really odd spot to put photon cannons, actually. I don't understand why you would do this. Because even if, like, you're gonna get dropped by a Zerg player, anti-air defenses really don't do anything. Primarily because if you're going to drop as a Zerg player, just don't bring the 10 Overlords that have units. Bring, like, all 50 of your Overlords. It's that simple. Because he's not going to be able to snipe the ones that have units. It's very actually useful. Because it's just a cluster of Overlords over your base that just, you can't kill all of them. So all of the units are going to get out. All the units that survive the drop are going to get out. We have an Archon morphing in, and there's like the instant cancel on the 4th base. Testament is definitely not confident in his army, nor should he be really. His army is much smaller than Clayjar's right now. The engagement is happening. These force fields, actually with the high zealot count, these force fields are kind of going to help the Zerg more than the Protoss, especially with this Archon. Now those are actually really good force fields trapping those roaches like that. However, still, I mean, as soon as all these roaches go down, these zealots are kind of just going to go back to being the dead meat that they were originally. Now, of course, this engagement is going strongly for our Protoss player. He's only basically lost zealots at this point. The snipe is trying to come out on the Archon, but the army is just so strong because he was not trying to build up any sort of economy. I still don't know why he only has 5 gateways. There are actually 22 roaches on the way, and 22 roaches should be able to clean this up. In theory, unless there is a giant warp in, which actually Clayjar might be able to do. This is a lot of zealots. If he doesn't force field, he might actually be able to take the next engagement, because there is not that many roaches left. There's only 21 roaches, 25 now, but it's 25 roaches versus like 13 zealots, 7 stalkers, and 7 sentries. So with the Guardian Shield, this army is going to be much more survivable, especially considering the fact that there are 2 Archons coming out right now. You know, and those Archons are amazingly tanky units. And, you know, denying that 3rd base was very important for Clayjar, because Clayjar was actually far behind as far as harvesters go, and as far as bases go. He's only at, you know, he's now going to be actually in the lead of bases. He's going up to 3 bases, but he only has like 45 harvesters to his opponent's 57. So even after this base finishes, like the long distance mining is going to allow the Zerg player to keep up for at least until this hatchery finishes, and then the hatchery in its own right is going to allow the Zerg player to keep up, purely because he's just not going to be able to saturate this nexus fast enough. And we have the army from the Protoss player still very massive. However, all of his forward pylons have gone down, which is kind of annoying. This scouting zealot is going to see the move out of the roaches, and these roaches don't want to be here right now. This is not a large enough amount of roaches to actually warrant trying to engage with this. And again, these force fields that are really just not helping him out at all. I mean, like, his army was just so superior. He could have just gone for literally a straight engagement and then perfectly fine. These force fields are, of course, much better because they're just stopped. They're slowing the retreat down from these roaches. And, yep, all the zealots are going to go down, but zealots are not all that important to keep alive at this stage of the game. The only thing that Clayjar really needs to do right now is needs to drop like 3 or 4 more gateways. If he's going for this heavy gateway ball, he really needs to commit, and he just needs to build up to like 9 gateways, because on 3 bases you can actually support 9 gateways pretty well, especially if you're spending a lot of time warping in zealots, and those zealots have charge, and you know those zealots are actually going to be a major part of your army, which his are. We have +2 weapons on the way, and just now +1 melee is coming down from Testament. Is Testament going to go for a melee switch versus a gateway army? That would be kind of weird, because zealots are just so good against basically all forms of oh wait, is he just building that for the Broodlords? Huh, I think he's just building that melee attacks for the Broodlings, which is kind of odd. Now this Broodlord switch is actually going to be pretty devastating to Clayjar, at least to how his army is set up right now, where he's just warping in a lot of zealots and trying to keep all of his stalkers alive, and he's just continuing to warp in a ton of zealots. However, he is going up to a lot more gateways. I think this is actually going to be like, alright, it's 7 + 5, it's like 12 gateways, which is a bit on the heavy side. I'd have to say that's a bit too many. It's a bit too many warp gates. However, with these Templar having Storm now, don't warp them, just use them for storms. I mean, just keep like 7 or 8 Templar and just Storm, because Storm is so useful against the Zerg army. Because if you look at a Broodlord, Broodlords don't run out of Storms. They are not nearly fast enough. And a Storm does, what, 80 damage? So like 3 Storms kills a Broodlord. So if all of his Broodlords are clumped up into a pack, like there's 10 Broodlords, and you know, you can probably hit all 10 Broodlords with 2 Storms, I would say. If you can land both those Storms 3 times, you will kill all of his Broodlords, and then you win the game. Because, you know, underneath those Broodlords is probably the Roach army or something to that effect, and really that's, you know, just kill the Broodlords, and then you win the game, because that's the really big beefy unit from the Zerg composition that you need to worry about. However, going for so many Archons, I don't agree with it. I don't think it's a good decision. Because Archons in the upcoming engagements aren't going to be that major. They're kind of just going to eat Birdlings. I mean, they're really great tanks and they're good at tanking. However, with +3 armor, I would actually say that Zealots are better because they are going to have that +3 armor for their entire lifespan instead of for only the last 10 health of it. So those Zealots are actually going to be taking a lot less damage than you would think. And this Zerg army splitting up is not really what you want to do. Broodlords, if they're not supported and your opponent has Blink, and does he have Blink? He does have Blink. That's not good. So this Broodlord army is coming up, however, it's not catching his opponent in a really great spot. It looks like he's just blasting them structural rocks, which is arguably a good move, because it stops, you know. Here comes the engagement. The Roach is really far behind. Oh my god. Broodlords, that's not where the Storms need to be. The Storms need to be on the Broodlords. And there the Storms and the Broodlords finally going down here. He just does not have enough Templar with enough energy to kill all of the Broodlords. It's actually going to be an amazingly... it's going to be quite the close engagement. Again, that's not really where you want the Storms. You want the Storms on the Broodlords, because the Broodlords are the units that are really doing damage, and the units that are really murdering your entire force. There's the Blink under the Broodlords, and the Stalkers doing work. And actually, all the Roaches went down too. Huh. Alright. Well then, without Infestors to lock down the Stalkers before they can Blink, there's just not a whole lot of certain players can do against Blink Stalkers when they're going for Broodlords, especially if the Broodlords are kind of out of position. Because you want the Broodlords behind your Roaches, so that if that big Blink under happens, your Roaches just start murdering all of the Stalkers. Because your Broodlords, I would say like 90% of the damage is actually from the Broodlings, and just from the amount of havoc that a Broodling wreaks in an army. Because if you launch two Broodlings into an army, it messes up pathing. It messes up the positioning of your opponent's army, and it just absolutely ruins his composition, because his composition is just not going to be able to stay clumped where he wants it to stay clumped. We have a big Mutalisk switch happening right now. However, when your opponent's going for a gateway army, Mutalisk switches aren't really that great. You want like a Roach, Hydra, Infestor switch. Because Roaches, Hydras, and Infestors are all extremely good against those gateway units. Because the Hydra's just absolutely DPS the hell out of, Okay, so he's just trying to scare him a little bit with these Overload drops, which is something that a lot of people don't do. However, it can help. It's just not going to play any major role in a battle. It's not going to win you a battle. It's also not going to lose you the game. Primarily because it just causes the Stalkers to blink once and just start sniping them. And if your army just isn't big enough to handle it, you're not going to win. Here comes the Mutas. They're kind of manning up. However, manning up against +3 armor on these Stalkers, not what you want to do, especially when you don't have any attacker carapace. Or any attacker attack either. That was kind of nasty carnage. We have +1 shields even coming out from Clayjar, which is like that super duper late game upgrade that you really only get when you're going Archons, and he stopped going Archons a little while ago. And Clayjar, I think, could really just start, you know, forcing the issue and kind of murdering his opponent at this point. His economy is down to like 2 bases. I mean, this second base is not going to last for another minute. So it's going to be a 1 base versus 2 base scenario in just a little bit. And Testament doesn't have that big of a bank. He has enough bank to maybe make 1 more Roach army, and that's all he's going to get after this little pack goes down. And he needs more Roaches, because these Mutalisks, the Mutalisk deck switch was a huge blunder. He's going for more Broodlords. However, Broodlords, again, they need to be positioned well, and with such a large Blink Stalker army, you need Infestors to help out with those Broodlords, because otherwise they're just going to get blunk under and murdered. When it comes to Stalkers, they're actually pretty good against Roaches too. If you just look at the Stalker attack, he actually does do more damage to armored units, and Roaches are of course armored, so these Roaches are going to be taking 16-ish damage a shot, and Roaches die really fast when they're under that type of pressure. We have the actual Max coming out from Testament, and he's going for the snipe on the 4th bases, which is a very important thing. However, he just doesn't have the DPS. He's going to take out the Nexus, but he's going to lose this entire massive Roach ball, which is really something he cannot do right now. Because even though he took out his opponent's economy, his own economy is not good enough to support suicide attacks like that. And, we see more Corruptors coming out for more Broodlords. However, he doesn't have the money to actually morph them into Broodlords yet. He's going to need to wait just a little bit longer to morph them into Broodlords, which is really not something you want to be doing at this point. We have Clayjar with the Detector scouting out that main base, seeing what is coming up. He knows that it's basically just Broodlords on the menu at this point, and there's no Broodlords yet. There are the first 3 morphing. However, this Protoss army will easily be able to deal with 3 Broodlords, especially with this Mothership coming in, because a Mothership with Vortex, then you can just dump your entire army into the Vortex. And if his Broodlords are in the Vortex, all the Broodlings disappear, and then everything dies. That's kind of just what happens. Because the Broodlords come out, they launch like 2 Broodlings apiece, and then they die. There's nothing else you can do about that. And Testament, the longer he stays alive currently, the better his chances. However, his chance is never going to get awesome, purely because of the size of this Protoss army and the fact that he just does not have enough Broodlords. He has 5 Broodlords morphing currently, which will bring his total up to 9. However, 9 Broodlords is still just not enough to deal with such a massive gateway ball, especially with that Mothership support. That Mothership support is going to be so key, because he does not... Oh no, he does have Overseas. However, these Broodlords, they're coming in. This engagement, I feel like, is going to be very strongly favoring the Oh, Testament just left. Oh, alright. Whoop. Nice job, Clayjar, winning that game. And if you guys want to send your games in to be commentated, you can send them on into boisteroussc2@gmail.com. Also, if you would like to follow along with anything else I do, or if you would like to watch any other games I've commentated in the past, you can head over to youtube.com/user/boisteroussc2. And I will be doing an upcoming tournament called the Forum Diamond and Up on Sunday, and that will be streamed live over at my Twitch account over at twitch.tv/boisteroussc2. So follow that channel there if you want to watch all of that action. And thank you all for tuning in. Have a good day.